The first branch of the law of tort we're going to look at today is the trespass to person. So what is trespass to person? Trespass to person involve direct interference with a person's body or liberty. Meaning, it's either involving you personally to your body, like injury, or liberty means you are refrained from going elsewhere. So there are three types of trespass to person. First one is assault. Second one is false imprisonment. And the third one is battery. We're going to look at each of these trespass to person individually. Okay. Okay, you have seen the video where that person, Harrison Ford, came out from the car and was like screaming, "Are you nuts?" You know, like probably that words itself actually sounded like an assault to the other person. You know, and from assault can create to a battery. So the words used by Harrison Ford itself can actually tantamount to an assault. So what is it? You know, when you define assault, it means intentional and direct act of defendant. So in this case, the actor Harrison Ford, he just immediately says, "Are you nuts?" Right? And causes the plaintiff reasonable apprehension of immediate infliction. So the other person, you know, he was very angry when Harrison Ford saying that, "Are you nuts?" He immediately just straight away go to Harrison Ford, and he knows at that particular time Harrison Ford was also angry. So basically both parties actually screaming at each other, sounded like they are assaulting each other. So basically the actual definition is where there was intentional direct act of defendant which causes the other party, which is the plaintiff, reasonable apprehension, meaning immediate, reasonable logic feeling that he is scared that somehow or other the defendant would cause them a force, would cause them injury, you know, would actually push them aside or push to that level whereby they have to fight back. So these are the definition of assault. What you see just now was an assault leading to a battery. We will see a battery in a short while. Now, in order for a plaintiff to bring actions against a defendant and to make a defendant guilty, to make a defendant actually has an assault on plaintiff, right? The plaintiff has to prove 4 elements. Remember, this is a case brought by the plaintiff against the defendant. So plaintiff has to prove, okay? What are the things that the plaintiff has to prove? So there are 4 elements. Plaintiff must prove everything, right? Now, first one, intention of the defendant to do harm on the plaintiff. You know, when the other party saying, "Are you nuts?" You know, like he came out from the car, straight away walk to the other party, and surely the other party would think that, okay, he is going to harm me, he's going to hit me, you know, that kind of thing. So there was an intention of the defendant to do harm on the plaintiff. Now, what about the effect on the plaintiff mind? No, when the other party who's on the other side looking at him coming to his direction, he knew, you know, that there would be force being done by onto him. And the third element is capability of defendant to carry out the threat. So even though he said, "Are you nuts?" the fact that he came out from the car, coming out from the car, going towards him, there is a capability of doing or making the force onto him. Or in other words, capability of the defendant to carry out the threats, and the bodily movement of the defendant itself shows that harm would be done on the plaintiff. Okay, now we're going to look into each of the elements which the plaintiff has to prove. Okay, and each elements will be there will be cases to illustrate those elements. So we're going to go the first element. The first one is the intention of the defendant to do harm. Now, they must have intention to do harm. If there is no intention, right? So basically, there is the one of the element of an assault is not fulfilled. Now, in this case, in Tuberville and Savage, defendant told the plaintiff, right? If it were not a cease time, I will not take those words from you. A cease times mean during that time, the judges go from one places to another places. Yeah. So at that particular time, a cease time. This is where at that particular time the judge is around on that locality. So the defendant told the plaintiff, if it's not because of the judges who was there, okay, surely he would just hit him, that kind of thing. So the court held that those words negative the elements of intention of the defendants. So indirectly there was no intention, unless it says here, you better watch out, I'm going to do something on you. That is an intention. In the case of Tuberville, that is a negative. Okay, so for plaintiff, you must prove that defendant has the intention to do harm. Okay, now what about effects on the plaintiff mind? The plaintiff must feel reasonable apprehension. He can feel that a force will be inflicted upon him. He will feel that a threat will be actually upon him. So reasonable apprehension is measured through an objective test. So how do you know it's reasonable apprehension? Okay, you measure it through an objective test, that would a reasonable man face the same situation, okay, that the plaintiff was in, would he also feel the same force? Okay, when the answer is yes, meaning if the other person, a reasonable man, in the same situation as plaintiff, if he feel that he will also feel the force that will be committed upon him, that particular element will be fulfilled, meaning the second element will be fulfilled. Okay, what does it mean by force then? Okay, we know that feel apprehensive, that a force, yeah. So there was a force here. So what does force mean? Okay, force mean is some kind of violence. You know, when that Harrison Ford came out from the car, as he came out, his body, his character shows that he's going to do violence on the other person. So violent mean some form, force mean some form of violent contact that will put reasonable man to be in a reasonable fear of attack. You know that he's going to attack you. So look at this case. This is another case of that we need to look at. Okay, in the case of R and St. George, it was held that pointing an unloaded gun at a person constituted an assault. Yeah, even though it was unloaded, what will happen? You know that the person who is holding the gun, he may be capable of shooting at you. So the fact that he pointed a gun to you, it is an assault. It doesn't matter whether it is a loaded gun or an unloaded gun. Okay. Now, the other one. Okay, the third element. Capability of the defendant to carry out the threat. So how do we know that the defendant is carrying out the threat? How do you know they are capable to do it? Okay, so the requirement is measured through the eyes of a reasonable plaintiff. Again, the test will be objective. Would a reasonable man who is in the plaintiff position who feel fear that there was a threat of immediate force, right? Just like there was effects on the mind. Okay, now do you think that the defendant are able to carry out the threat? Okay, now would a reasonable man feel the same thing, that defendant will carry out the threat, right? So this requirement is fulfilled if the answer is yes. Now look at the case of Stephan and Myers. Okay, defendant threatened to hit the plaintiff, and he advanced with his with clenched fist upon the plaintiff. Right? He wanted to hit the plaintiff. However, defendant was stopped by a third party just before he could reach. Right? the plaintiff. Now, the court held, right? Although he was stopped by a third party, there was assault because, okay, there was a capability to carry out the threat. If it's not because of the third party who stopped him, okay, that particular defendant are able to hit the plaintiff. So there was still an assault. Okay. Now, and the last element is bodily movement of defendant. Now, even though assault involve no contact, you don't touch the defendant. Sorry, you don't touch the plaintiff body yet. It was just by movement, voices, loud voice, or the way you look at people. So it's more of body movement of defendant. So there's no contact. So basically, this body movement means a positive act in the circumstances, indicating that the defendant will carry out the threat. So body movement is per se is not adequate. It must also correspond to the probable infliction of unwarranted force on plaintiff. Meaning to say, even though there was a body movement, okay, you know that there's a probability that he's going to hit you. Okay, so there must be a body movement to indicate the threat. Okay, to indicate that the threat will be carried out. Now look at this reed and choker. Okay, plaintiff was in a financial difficulties. He has not paid his rent. Okay, now his landlord purchased his equipment. So basically, when landlord purchases equipment, meaning the rent is paid. Okay, however, one day the landlord told plaintiff to leave the premises because he's still not paying his rent. Okay, defendant come with his workmen, his defendant's people, gathered around the plaintiff, tucking his sleeve, threatening to break his neck if he did not leave the place. So basically, defendant left, so he brought an action for trespass. Okay, trespass for assault. Now, court held that the facts surrounding the circumstances clearly showed that defendant was guilty of an assault. Okay, there was a threat of violence, exhibiting an intention to assault, and there was also present an ability to carry out the assault. Okay, so basically, mere words are insufficient. The plaintiff must also apprehend. The plaintiff must also feel that there would be some physical force. Okay, somehow or other, assault normally is the beginning of a battery. Okay, now if you have to prove something, if you are the plaintiff, you must prove all elements. Okay, the first, second, third, and fourth element to show that assault exists. Only then a plaintiff case will succeed.